This video is going to go through comma rules 8 through 10. So what you can do is you can pause it when you get to the end of each comma rule so that you can do the activities on your sheet. Comma rule number 8 is the first one we're going to go through. So this is very similar to comma rule number 7 in the fact that you're dealing with pauses at the end of a sentence again. So it has kind of a long, strange definition that can be hard to understand. So there isn't that much that you need to take away from this. I'll try to highlight a couple things, but it says, use commas to set off phrases at the end of the sentence that refer to the beginning or middle of the sentence. Such phrases are free modifiers that can be placed anywhere in the sentence without causing confusion. If the placement of the modifier causes confusion, then it is not free and must remain bound to the word it modifies. Okay. The biggest thing I want you to take away from that is that you are looking for phrases at the end of a sentence. This part about it being a free modifier is not going to make a lot of sense right now. Hopefully by the next page it'll make a little bit more sense. The other thing I want you to take away from this slide is that you're looking just for phrases that start with words ending in ing. Once you find that word, often it'll always be a verb, ending in ing, you are going to ask yourself whether or not you can move those to another part of the sentence. The other thing you're going to ask yourself is whether or not it's just an extra description at the end. Okay, so let's look at the next page to see actually why we're asking those questions. So on this page I have one example that does use a comma and then one that does not. So in this first one it says, I stayed quiet trying to appear calm. We have a verb, trying, ending in ing. So we're going to take that phrase, trying to appear calm, and see if we can move it to the start of the sentence. So we can instead say, trying to appear calm, I stayed quiet. It means the same thing as I stayed quiet trying to appear calm. Down here we have the word running, ending in ing, and if we took this whole part here, running toward the park, and tried to move it to the start of the sentence, we would sound a little bit goofy. It would say, running toward the park they were, which makes it sound like Yoda, but isn't a proper sentence. So this one can't be moved around the way that this phrase, trying to appear calm, could be moved around. So when they talk about free modifiers here, that means that they're free to move to an earlier or a different part of the sentence. So every time you find your ing verb for this rule, you're going to find the phrase that goes with it, and then see if you can flip it around so that it comes at the beginning of the sentence, and see if it still makes sense. The other way to think about this is whether or not what you have is just an extra detail about the sentence. So I stayed quiet makes sense all on its own, and then we just have trying to appear calm as an extra detail about it. Down here, if we tried to take this out, they were is not a sentence all on its own, and running toward the park is actually the main action going on in the sentence. So it's very different from the example up here. Up here you'll notice I have this final check that the other part of the sentence, like I stayed quiet, should work as a sentence on its own. So you can always double check your work that way as well. Okay, there are some practice problems for rule number 8. So I let it go, assuming it wasn't worthwhile. We find our ing verb, assuming. We're going to take everything with that and see if we can put it at the beginning of the sentence. So assuming it wasn't worth it, I let it go. That makes sense. So in this case, I would put a comma before it. Harold is waiting for them to come back. Here we have waiting. And if we tried to move this around and say, waiting for them to come back, Harold is, once again, that doesn't really work. That makes it sound like Yoda, but it's not going to work as a sentence. Jenny and Jim talked for a while trying to pass the time. We could say, trying to pass the time, Jenny and Jim talked for a while. So that one works. We put a comma right before trying. Francis left the restaurant early, needing to get back home by 5. Once again, we can say needing to get back home by 5. Francis left the restaurant early. So that one gets a comma. My cousins were playing a game of touch football at Thanksgiving. Here we have playing a game of touch football at Thanksgiving, my cousins were. That's not a sentence on its own. So we cannot move that one around so it doesn't get a comma. Stuart didn't say anything, just hoping they forgot about it. This one is meant to be a trick. So if I tried to move it, I'd say hoping they forgot about it. Stuart didn't say anything just, which doesn't sound right. But the issue here isn't that this one is bound to this part of the sentence. It's that we have this adverb that goes with the word hoping. I'm not going to give you any like this on the test. I just wanted to put one example like this in here to show you that sometimes it gets a little bit trickier. So this one, we would have just hoping they forgot about it. Stuart didn't say anything. That makes sense. The comma would actually go right here. But that's trickier than what you will need to do for your assessment. If you would like to, this would be a good time to pause the video and then go try the problems for comma rule number 8 on your worksheet. Okay. For comma rule number 9, there are a lot of different rules that go along with it. These are kind of just the common uses of commas that we have to memorize. And a lot of these you use on a daily basis, or at least pretty regularly. So a lot of people are familiar with these, which is probably why they're all grouped into one comma rule. So it says, use commas to set off all geographical names, items, and dates except the month and day, addresses except the street number and name, and titles and names. So we have examples down here. Here we have the day of the week, Tuesday. Before we actually give the date, we'll put a comma. March 12th, notice I don't have a comma between the month and the day. And then I have a comma before I get to the year 1985. If you're ever stuck on this and you look up at my board, you'll notice that there is at least the day of the week and then the month and day number. So you'll see that there's a comma between these always. For an address, you will not put any commas in the part of the address where you get the street number and the street name, but then you'll put a comma between all the other parts. So you'll put a comma before you get to the city, a comma before you get to the state, and then if you go further, a comma before the country, a comma before the zip code. And then the last one is this one that talks about titles and names. So that would be like down here, John Smith, PhD, or it could be MD, or it could even just be somebody's job title. So if John Smith had a business card that said John Smith, engineer, there would be a comma before the name, or before the word engineer. Okay, let's practice a little bit with these, although again, these are ones that people have down pretty well. This first one just has the street number and the street name, so it doesn't get any commas. I was born on August 5th. You'd put a comma before the year, 1991, in Stevens Point. You put a comma before the state, Wisconsin. Hank Jennings, MD. So there's another example of what the title would look like. This is the one that's least familiar to most people. Will be my doctor. Jerome lives at 123 South Collins Street. That's where we get to the end of the street name. Portage is the city. Wisconsin is the state. And then we have the zip code. So we put commas between everything except the street number and street name. My name and title reads as Jim Wilkins, engineer. Okay, I forgot I had engineer on this page as well. But once again, this would be a strange sentence, but on business cards this comes up a little bit more. Wait until Friday, April 13th, 2018. Put a comma after the day, not between the month and the day number, but then before the year. Okay, so that's it for comma rule number 9. If you would like to, this would again be a good time to pause the video and then go do the practice problems on your worksheet if you haven't yet done so. Comma rule number 10 is also not too tricky. This deals with quotes and dialogue. So you'll use a comma to shift between the main discourse and a quotation. So anytime you're moving from a quotation to just regular text, you're going to use a comma. You've already done this when you've used quotes in your essay. So this hopefully looks a little bit familiar. So the examples that I have here have it where you're splitting a quotation. One where you have the quotation and then the speaker tag, and then one where you introduce it and then have the quotation. So there are 3 different formats this could take. So when you look at your worksheet and I tell you to follow the 3 different formats when you're making your own, this is what I mean. This would be one format, this would be a second one, this would be a third one. But in each of them, it follows the same rule. Anytime you're switching from the quotation, like here, to the regular text, like here, you're going to use a comma. And then I'm switching back to a quotation at the end here, so I'm going to use a comma again. Here, I'm starting with a quotation, but then when I get to the end of it, I have a comma. and then I have the tag afterwards. I'm switching from the quotation to just the regular text. And here I'm starting with my regular text, and then when I'm switching to the quotation, I use a comma to show that I'm switching, and that is the end. Notice that if I'm not actually using somebody's direct words, I don't use a comma at all, but I also don't use quotation marks. So hopefully that doesn't get too tricky for you. One big mistake that people make with this is that they will be a little bit careless with where they put that comma. So I have highlighted down here that it is always going to be a comma and then the quotation mark. Okay, and at the end of your sentence, you will never place a comma. Same with at the beginning of your sentence, you'll never have a comma. So at the end, the way that we end is with a period or sometimes with an exclamation point or a question mark if that's more appropriate. Down here I show how some people make the mistake of putting the quotation mark first. This is incorrect. Or sometimes trying to fit a comma here at the end, which also can lead to a mess. So be careful never to put your comma at the end, and also to always put your comma before the quotation mark, whether it's inside of it, like when you are ending a quote, or before you actually go back into the quote here. The order is always comma and then quotation mark. So for our practice ones, we don't actually have to read them to do these. We just look for where we're switching from a quotation to regular text. So here at the end of I should make this one simple, we have the end of our quotation. So we'd put a comma before the quotation mark, and he said. Here we have last year, that's the end of our first quotation. He began, and we're going back to the quotation, was one of the most difficult years of my life. Here we have Alexei writes, and then our quotation starts. Again, notice it's comma, then quotation mark. Junior was born with water in his brain. Not an actual quotation, if you were being critical. Stop, he shouted. So after stop, you have a comma, then he shouted. This is one really tricky one because you could also, if you were writing this as dialogue, do this and it's legal. It's perfectly fine. You're not breaking any grammatical rules. But just for getting a handle on how commas are used to switch between this text and regular text, it's best to remember that it's never wrong to use a comma in this instance. Down here, if you're trying to find the errors, it says give me a day, he noted, and I'll forgive you. There's only one, so hopefully you're able to see that this person mixed up the order, so they put a quotation mark before their comma, which is incorrect. You want to switch it so it's comma and then quotation mark. And then down here, Hannah whispers, what's wrong? This one has actually two things. One, the person's trying to squeeze in a comma here, but also the quotation mark should be over here. Okay, so that's what it should look like if it was corrected. That is the end of my slideshow. So once again, please use this information to then go to the last part of your worksheet. There are some where you are just adding commas, but then there are some where you're writing your own sentence. Remember that I already mentioned that when I say that you have to use 3 different formats, this is one format, this is another format, this is another one. So you're just changing where you put that speaker tag, either before, after, or in the middle of your quotation. If you have any questions, please let me know or let Ms. Vanderwerf know, and we will help you as best as we can. All right, I hope this was helpful.